Hey everyone, it's Nick here, and if you can't tell, this stone is cracked. Those are the weird dark spiderweb lines going through my stone. And my stone was fine. It's a very thin stone, maybe like 1.5 inches thick, and it survived me a good solid 3 years, but it looks like today was the day that it finally cracked. And fortunately, it managed to hold itself up for the rest of the edition, as long as I did not touch it while I was on the press bed. Because as soon as I moved it off the press bed, it definitely started to show signs of cracks developing. And the noise wasn't completely obvious at first. This is the first stone I've been in the room when it broke, and it was just a loud pop noise, kind of like the same that you might just hear from, like, I don't know, a gear slipping, or just like, one of the springs just giving a little creak. And I wasn't quite sure what it was at first, and these lines weren't appearing for a while. Only after a few 10 minutes did these lines start getting darker, and I could actually tell what happened. And so it went through an addition of 40 after it had already cracked, lucky me. And so I ended up taping the edges of the stone together and taking it home. Now when the stone's dry, you can't see these lines at all, just very, very faint. But the cracks did get worse with the car ride, as very apparent when you flip this thing over. And very interestingly, they cut, just kind of straight down through the stone. And there goes some chunks of the stone. It's really fallen apart now. So let's finally take the tape off of this stone and see what we're dealing with. So a little bit of backstory about this stone. I actually got this stone as a gift for helping my print professor Michael Barnes move a bunch of litho stones out of a U-Haul truck in the middle of the night. And so, it's very thin. It's only about 1.5 inches thick, and it actually split once already. Once I took it and I set it up on its side, kind of vertically, as I was getting ready to pick it up, and it split kind of hamburger style, just right down the middle. And I ended up just using a bunch of CA glue, spreading it over the whole thing, and just sandwiching it back together, and it held on for another 2 years. So I want to see what I can do about this stone. I don't want to just throw the whole thing away. There's still half of it is kind of usable, and it's just a very terrible shape. It's just now it's kind of like a pentagon instead of a rectangle. And funnily enough, here you can actually see this is where it's split in half hamburger style. And so I guess I did a good enough job gluing it together that it didn't split again on that same plane. So here's the plan. I bought a hammer. It says it's for rock cutting, and a chisel, which also said it was for rock cutting. And today we're going to see if I can cut this into a rectangle with just this hammer and chisel. I saw an old YouTube video about some people mining litho stones out of a quarry, and they just used hammered and chisels, and so I figured I want to try the same. It sounds fun. I've got a decent amount of hand-eye coordination, and I imagine anyone else who does lithography probably has some decent hand-eye coordination. And so litho stone is limestone, and so I also watched a few videos on cutting just limestone in general, and I found this really nice video by Mike Haduck, who just kind of cuts limestone, and he said it was simple, soft, and just go for it and see what happens. And so I thought, what, maybe it's not that bad. So he made it look easy, and that alleviated a lot of my fear and anxiety. So let's go ahead and get this stone marked up. So I'm going to go ahead and take a little kind of right angle ruler and just kind of mark off this stone. And if I round the edges, I think I can get myself a 6x8 stone, which would be perfect for me printing my little 4x6 postcard image size. So I think that's what I'm going to go with. And then off camera, I also marked the underside of this stone too. So I went ahead and took the stone outside so I can go ahead and get started. I imagine it's going to be very messy. And I just kind of went at it with the hammer. And to my surprise, it kind of cut or chipped very accurately. Where I hit it with the hammer is where the part would kind of chunk off of. The only thing is, I couldn't really control my hammer perfectly to always hit where I wanted it to hit. So just a little bit more practice with the hammer. Now, my dad does have a tile saw, and Professor Barnes did tell me that he's used a diamond saw and cut stones quite well with good results, and I'm sure both of those have worked really well, and I would have went for that if this didn't work out. But this is the more fun option. But keep those in mind in case you need to do this more accurately and reliably. Some things I kind of figured out from hitting the stone, you kind of have to hit it pretty hard. If you kind of half-ass hit it like this, you just kind of don't do anything until it chips too much like that. So just kind of give it one decisive blow to kind of chip it off in one clean chunk. Also, this thing is like pretty loud. I had to go ahead and put in some earplugs and of course wear some safety glasses because I think I did have one shard did fly towards my safety glasses. So it could have been in my eye. Thank goodness it's not. Now once I got this close to my line, I was not confident in my hand-eye coordination to actually, cut up to that line. And so that's when I busted out the chisel. And, I didn't know whether to hold the bevel side towards me or bevel side away from me. But the chisel was actually like very easy to control and very reliable. It cut a cleaner line than I was expecting. I did find that, just then, if I try to take too big of a bite at once, that it just wouldn't work, or maybe I'm not hitting hard enough. And so I learned that you have to take small bites at a time. So I do wish that maybe I just got a smaller chisel. Maybe like 1 inches would have been perfectly fine. I bought this one because I figured it would give me straighter lines, but I guess that's not really the case. So take small bites with your chisel. Honestly, I feel like I probably get away with just kind of a normal kind of woodworking chisel if I blunted it a little bit. But I feel like if I just had the chisel and the hammer, I could do this plenty easily. Now I do think that the split line down the middle from where it fell apart and I glued it back together is interfering with me from getting a perfectly clean kind of cut all the way down. But so far, this ain't the worst thing I've ever seen. Now, don't take my word for it, because I've never done this before. I'm sure if there are any stonecutters watching this video, they could probably give more sound advice, but I feel like going somewhat straight down with the bevel side out gave me some cleaner cuts with the chisel. That's just me though, going back through this footage. It could just be a user error sort of thing. Now, the sides of the stone were faced pretty roughly, and I wanted to get that a little bit more straight, And so I didn't quite know what to do because I couldn't set my chisel on it since it wasn't flat anymore and just kind of cut down through it. So I ended up putting on its side and just kind of raking this chisel over it. And, I don't know if this is the way you're supposed to do it, but I imagine, the same way I used woodworking chisels, which is the lip side down, I figured that's what I should do here. And I just kind of went over the whole thing a ton to kind of flatten it out. And now I went ahead and got the meat tenderizer looking head of the hammer type of hammer because I imagined that's how they got the weird kind of like textured sides of the litho stones. Some of my stones have little textured sides, and so I just kind of went ahead and used that to kind of lightly just kind of knock down the peaks and texture the sides of the stone, and it somewhat worked, but I think I might have done more damage to the edge of the stone than good. I did lose a little chunk. And so with a bit more practice, I was starting to get a feel for it, and it was pretty fun. And here you can see, after I've gotten a lot more practice, it's a lot more straight down of a cut than the last one was. And if you hadn't already guessed, this left a huge mess in my backyard. And after I was relatively satisfied with the shape of this stone and how rectangular it was, I went ahead and grabbed my trusty file. And so I use a diamond file for when I file the edges of my stone, just because it doesn't wear down quite as much, and it has a really nice coarse side and a finer side, which makes for really fast filing. Afterwards, I was left with a pretty good rectangle. The original face of the stone is a little worse for wear. You can see I got a little too close when I was hammering the sides, and I lost a lot of these chunks. And they're actually not that deep, and I imagine I could, after maybe, like 10 or so prints and graining, that'll wear back down into a flat surface. But the backside, honestly, it's a little bit better, and it does have a little bit of pitting, but I think I could grain through it in maybe like 8 or 10 passes. So maybe this will be the new face of this stone. So now that I'm happy with this rectangle, let's go ahead and grain it flat. Since it's such a small stone, I'm going to go ahead and do some stone on stone, using it as the top stone. And after about 8 passes, I think I finally got all of the pitting out of the stone, and I'm sure it'll only get better with more uses. But isn't that just a beautiful rectangular stone, ready to be put to use once more? Now you can definitely tell which edges that it came with, these nice, very flat, clean edges, and the edges that I cut, which are a bit more rough. But I would say that's passable. Like, this stone is in pretty good shape, and I wouldn't hate it if I had to handle that stone. Now, you might be thinking, that stone, it's still really thin. Won't it just break again when you try to print it? And that might be true. Maybe I'll build a small litho press that doesn't overly apply pressure. Or maybe I'll try backing the stone. One of the two things. But that's an adventure for another time. Today, I did what I set out to do, which was cut this litho stone from a weird little pentagon into a nice usable rectangle. So I hope you enjoyed this adventure. Maybe you've got some litho stones lying around that you just kind of want to make nice and square. And let me tell you, it's not that bad. I'll leave links below to the tools that I bought. Again, if I had to do this again, honestly, I might be able to get away with just a normal hammer and just some normal blunt chisels. But I'll leave links to what I used. I would definitely get a smaller chisel, but again, I'll leave what I got just because I don't know what else to recommend. Alright, thanks for stopping by. Keep on printing, and don't be afraid to get a little bit messy.